Well, we just got done watching the 1993 Tombstone movie, and I'm so fortunate to be here with Peter Sherayko, who played Texas Jack Vermillion. How you doing today, Jack? Did you enjoy the movie again? Huh?
I always enjoy the movie. I'm so glad to be part of it.
Well, we have some extra special questions that were sent in that people are just wanting to know some information about the movie. And since you were the back man for a lot of this stuff, as well as a screen actor, I'm just going to start right into here. Now, Dr. Buck was supposed to be here. He's a stuntman out of Hollywood, and the last I heard, he was actually doing something for Tom Cruise or some kind of rumor like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the ball here and roll right off the first one. This is from Howard, and he says, I've heard that you supplied most of the guns for the movie, but is it true that Val Kilmer broke one of the guns that you actually supplied for him?
Broke one of the guns?
That he actually broke one that you gave him to use. Val Kilmer.
Yes.
That is absolutely true.
The very first day of shooting.
First day shooting?
Yes. I have an interesting story on that.
Is that inexperience or?
It's, well, the whole thing is I supplied all the guns, and Val is a consummate actor. Now, Val and I got along very well. I just hired him 2 years ago for a movie that we did, Soldier's Revenge. And Val has an attitude because he's a consummate actor, and he gets into his character, and he doesn't want to be bothered by anybody. So everybody comes up and asks him questions, and he doesn't want to be bothered. And people warned me about that. So I said, okay, I listened to that very well. And first day of shooting, the prop man went up to him and said something to him. I don't know what he said. We were all on horseback. And Val said, why are you saying that? And he just said, I just want to tell you that. And Val lit off at him, and he just yelled and everything. The prop guy got fired a week later because he was an idiot. But I'm looking over at Val, and speaking in public as I do, sometimes I get hoarse.
Take care of that solution.
It cures hoarseness. And I looked over at Val, and he had his gun half-cocked at his holster. Uh-huh. And I just rode over to him, and I said, Val, it doesn't look good. And he went, why? And I said, well, people watching the movie are going to see if your gun is half-cocked in the holster that you don't know how to handle a single action. Or you're going to break the gun, or you're going to hurt yourself. So, yeah, so he said to me, he just looked at me, and he goes, I find those who break the rules get ahead, don't you? And I said, okay, Val, I'm not going to argue with him. 5 minutes later, I looked over at him, and he had a different gun in his holster. Uh-huh. So I rode over to the armorer who I hired, and he's fixing Val's gun. I said, what happened? He said, Val broke the gun. So I rode back over to Val, and I looked at him, and I said, I see you have a different gun there. And he goes, I broke it. But from that moment, he knew that I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So we got along very well. Now, in the scene where Buck and I come out of the saloon and kill the guy, we were in a bar all night. So I'm drunk. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the story about everybody in Tombstone drinking. We drank. And I was drinking. Every take, I'm having a drink back there. So I was drunk over there. And then when we meet Doc and Wyatt and everybody, Val kept on looking at me. And later on in the afternoon, I'm walking down one of the sidewalks, and he's sitting over there, and he goes, hey, Pete, come here. You were drunk in that scene, weren't you? And I looked at him, and I said, I find those who break the rules get ahead, don't you? So, you know.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Statement made. I got a question from Sue Thurman here.
Yeah, I'm one of the few guys that has Val's home phone number, so I can talk to him.
You're still connected then?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Sue wants to know here, is it true that you found Sheriff Bean's actual firearm at a gun auction and purchased it for the movie?
Yes and no. Yes and no. During the course of writing the film, Kevin Jarre writing the film, he would call me every couple of days for a year. I worked with him on this. And he'd call me every couple of days to say, come on down. And I'd go to the house, And like midnight, he'd call me at 11 o'clock. He'd say, come on down here right now. I'd go down and he'd say, hey, you want to have a steak? So we'd cook a steak outside on the barbecue. Then we'd watch a Western movie. And then about 4 o'clock in the morning, he would give me about 5 pages. And he'd say, okay, here's 5 pages. Go home and break them down and tell me what guns they're going to use. So at that time, I didn't know that much about Sheriff Bean. And I said, you know, the sheriff's model just came out. I said, I think I should give him that. So I recommended that. And Kevin, when I did that a couple of days later, Kevin said, no. I think he should have like a little top break Smith, something elegant, not the sheriff's model. And I said, okay, Kevin, you know, you're the boss. So, you know, whatever he wanted. But that day, when I left his house, I went down to, there's a place in Orange County called Little John's Auctions. Uh-huh. And he auctions off all of these guns. And I went down there to buy a 76 Winchester that Jason Priestley used. So when I bought that, Little John goes to me, hey, Pete, I got this auction coming up. You might like it. Gave me the catalog. And I look at the catalog, and there's Sheriff Bean's gun. And it's a sheriff's model.
Short barrel.
And I went, yeah, short barrel, 4-inch barrel. And I went, oh, okay. So I took the catalog and I drove back to Kevin's house, knocked on the door. When he opened up the door, I just held the catalog open. And he looked and he went, all right, he gets a sheriff's model. But I'm going to tell you what else he used.
All right.
So
fantastic story. This next question comes from Old West historian Lee Anderson. A lot of people know him. He says, in the movie, Wyatt Earp uses a Colt single-action revolver. Is there a reason why he didn't use a Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver as the real Wyatt Earp used in the gunfight?
The real Wyatt Earp used several different guns, but Kevin wanted the 10-inch buttline, not the 12-inch buttline that everybody, that Colt makes and everything else. So he wanted the 10-inch. The reason for that is Buckskin Frank Leslie, who was an admirer of Wyatt Earp and a friend of his in Tombstone. There's a letter to Colt where he ordered a 10-inch barrel. And Kevin figured that, okay, here's a friend of yours. Yeah. And he orders a gun because he's your friend. He wants one like you have. So that's why Kevin wanted a 10-inch barrel. So what I did was I ordered 3 guns out of EMF. I ordered 3 barrels, 12-inch barrels from Colt, and then EMF took the barrels, cut them down to 10 inches, and then installed them on their guns. And that's how those guns came about.
Fantastic story. This one actually comes from Dr. Buck himself. He says, your character had one of the most unique and recognizable clothing in the movie.
What?
Clothing in the movie. So he wants to know if that creation was from the wardrobe department, or was that something that you put together personally, the wardrobe that you had for Tombstone?
I hired all the buckaroos, all the guys that were in the Red Sash gang.
Yes.
That you see. I hired 30 of those guys that were riding with Johnny Ringo and Curly Bill. And the very first meeting we had with, because I'm an actor, but I'm also a crew. I had a baseball cap that said, with both. It had crew on one side and actor on the other side. So we had this meeting, and everybody, all of the set designer, the costume designer, everybody's there. And Kevin, who was the director at first, he said, all right, let me see these guys you're bringing in. Well, I had everybody in alphabetical order. And the first guy, there's a famous picture of a hash knife cowboy from the 1880s. And what Jamison did was he copied that picture. He had his chaps made, the same chaps. He had the same saddle. He had same everything. And he took the picture in sepia tone in the same style that the guy had. And Kevin looked at it and he went, that's what I want. That's an Arizona cowboy of 1880s. That's what I want. Joseph Porter was the designer. He said, look at these. So Joseph looked at the pictures and he came up to me later and he said, after the meeting, and he said, what book did you get this picture out of? And I said, that's not a book. That's one of the buckaroos that are coming in to be the gang. And he goes, what? He goes, I can't have extras looking better than the stars. I said, don't worry about it. We can help you. So one of my buckaroos, Logan Clark, his wife ran a company called Island Girl, and she made shirts and vests and so forth for cowboy action shooters, and SAS members, and so I got her connected with Joseph. Joseph would come to my house, or his assistants would come to my house every other day, borrow some books, get the stuff, and then Joseph picked out the material and he designed what every character should have. If you notice, every character looks different.
Definitely.
Is unique. And he would design all that. And then he had Lonnie from Island Girl make all the shirts. He bought all the material, and then she made 400 shirts for the movie. And then I had a deal with Stetson that I've been dealing with for years.
Yeah.
I always buy, I don't know, 100, 200 hats, and I would give them away at different charity events that I would do. And then, of course, keep them and had a lot of hats. And so I made a deal with Stetson, and Kevin, again, was insistent. He says, I want the Boss of the Plains hat, 4-inch crown, 4-inch brim. So that's what Stetson made us. They made 200 hats for that. And then I had all the guys that make the boots, and I got a hold of them, and they made all the boots for that. There was a big gun show in California called, I don't remember what it was called. Anyway, it's not anymore. Nothing is anymore. They don't do gun shows anymore, for crying out loud. Let's get back to gun shows.
They're coming back.
So one of the boot makers from Montana was there, and I said, all right, I'm going to buy all the boots. Don't sell any. Take orders, but don't sell any of the boots. I have to buy them all for the movie.
Wow.
So I bought all the movie, and then I have the same guys that make saddles and make chaps, and they made all the chaps. And then I had another company in Mexico that did all of the period spurs. So I ordered I got all the spurs and everything, and I gave all that to Joseph. So Joseph gets all the credit for that because he designed everything, and I, got all that stuff.
It sounds like you had just an instrumental part and a big
Now
part.
the women's outfits and the
Somebody else,
and the
or-
men's suits and so forth. Joseph went over to England and got everything made in England. So all of that stuff was there. I mean, the guy is an incredible designer. He never did a Western before, but he knows, what it to look like.
Yeah. Fantastic information on wardrobe. Gilberto, he wanted to know on the Curly Bill scene when they're in the water and have the big shootout with Wyatt Earp, and he gets shot with the shotgun. He wanted to know if you remember the location area for that. Was that somewhere in California or
in California?
The location.
The location was
where that happened.
I want to say Mount Lemmon in
Tucson.
In Tucson.
Yeah.
In Tucson, where there was a river running there.
Okay.
And we filmed that scene like in June, and there was plenty of water there. That's when Will come out and shooting with the bad guys, and he yells Curly Bill. In August, they wanted to do a little pickup shot, so we all went back there, and that whole river was dry.
Yeah, that's Arizona.
Yeah, that's it. Dry as a river in Arizona in August.
Okay, how about being a fellow horseman myself and a horse owner in the Wyatt Earp and his Immortals ride, which you're part of that on that one, in that sequence. Were you or your fellow actors, when you were doing the extreme ridings, was there any problems or concerns with the actors doing those scenes? Even the shotgun scenes where you
No,
were
we
in that
all
one?
we all shot off the horses. I rode Kevin
Horses were
Jarry's
good?
actual horse, which we used to do a thing a year prior to the movie. We used to do the House of Ben ride, which one of the wranglers who was supposed to be the main wrangler, but because he wasn't union, he couldn't be the main wrangler, the head wrangler. So they hired someone else who lives in a condo and doesn't have any horses, but he's in the union. So we all know what unions do. And Gary, who had a horse stable in Sylmar, California, and he kept Kevin's horse there.
Okay.
And Kevin, Gary, and Frank Dragani, who was my assistant buckaroo coordinator, but he supplied most of the saddles, or all the saddles. And the four of us once a week or twice a week, we'd go out on what we call the House of Men ride. And we'd all take at least a pint of whiskey, 100 rounds of ammunition, leave at 9 o'clock at night, ride up in the mountains of California, and we wouldn't come back until the whiskey was gone or the ammunition was gone. And we'd be firing live rounds off off our horses.
That's fantastic. Like I said, being a rider myself, shooting off a horse, that horse has got to be something special.
Shooting on a horse, my horse that I had, my pain horse that I had, and he was in the movie. One of the Buckaroos rode him because Kevin wouldn't let me ride him, which was very funny because he was a big, strong, stout horse. You got to be to haul my fat ass around. Anyway, Kevin was a little strange sometimes because one day he would go, I don't want your horse on the movie because he's too big. I want skinny horses on the movie. I want, Frederick Remington horses. And the next day we were riding, he'd go, you're great on that horse. I want you to ride that horse. So, okay. So I bring the horse down to the set, and he tells the head wrangler, he asks the head wrangler, what horse is Pete going to ride? And he goes, he's going to ride his own horse. He goes, no, I told you to bring that horse. You told me to bring the horse.
I've always heard that they try and keep the movie horses around 14 or 15 hands.
They were
all sizes.
The black ones that we rode were some running thoroughbreds. They were big, tall horses.
Yeah.
Except the one that Kurt rode was a nice, stout quarter horse, and it was a good horse. And Kurt came up to me one day and he went. He goes, hey, I think I want to buy that horse. Oh. They only want $25,000 for him. Now, Kurt, of course, makes big money. I make little. That's $25,000. That's a $200 horse. What are you talking about? But that's the Wranglers saw him coming. They know he has money, and
cha-ching, huh?
There are people that want to spend more money because they have it, and they'd rather say, I bought a $25,000 horse instead of a $500 horse.
Yeah.
Which is a $500 horse, but we will tell them that.
Well, we're getting close to the end here, and this is a really good question. When I read it, I really enjoyed it. It's a common knowledge that you were in a lot of the film footage, the scenes and
common knowledge. I was in a lot of what?
In a lot of the film footage for Tombstone. Now, a lot of the scenes, some of the scenes just never make it onto the big screen. Was there any scenes in particular that you did that you really liked that got cut?
When we're killing all the bad guys, I had a scene which I have on. They sent me a DVD on it, and the bad guy is riding, and I come out of the woods, out of the trees, and I'm riding. I come up to him and catch him, and if you notice, I always had a quirt like hanging on me. Uh-huh. I take the quirt and I'm beating him over the head, face with the quirt, and then I ride ahead and I pull my gun and I shoot him. And I said, that's a great scene. Why isn't that there? Because if a lot of people are asking, how come I'm in the movie all the time, but I'm not in the movie all the time? Yeah. You have to understand that Kevin got fired. And I was his guy. I was his historian. I was his guy that brought everything to the movie. So picture a president, and I was his cabinet. Now the president is gone. They have a whole new cabinet in. And that's what, that's what happened.
Yeah. Was it a pleasure working with Buck Taylor?
Yeah, I've worked with Buck several times.
Yeah, he's I met him myself. I always thought he was a pretty good guy.
No, Buck is great. Buck is probably one of the nicest guys in the world, and I don't think I've met anybody that ever said anything bad about him.
Yeah, I got to agree to that.
He is just a super guy.
Well, I got to thank you, Peter, for appearing here tonight. I think we all agree to that. As
no
part
more
of the 2021 Chandler International
All right,
Film
any
Festival.
questions, any rags, any bones,
Thank
any
you for
bottles
creating
today?
such a memorable character, Texas Jack Vermillion, in one of the most beloved Westerns of all time.
Yeah. Anybody have a question? Yes. Come up very closer so I can hear you.
Besides the scenes that you were in, what was your favorite personal scene of the movie? Like slapping silly?
Being drunk out of the bar.
Yeah.
Being drunk out of the bar. And the stunt guy who falls down, we did that scene about 5 takes because he kept on falling in the wrong spot. And one of the last takes, he literally tripped me because I come out, okay, boys, this is a personal, and he fell down, and I was in my cups, and he tripped me. And I fell down and got up. Okay, all right, what's going on here? But that's the whole rule of making a movie.
Anybody else got a question you want to ask? While you're thinking of your question, I do want to thank Tony and Mike Casanova for sponsoring tonight's screening. Casanova Brothers Italian Pizza.
Yay, Tony! And I have to tell you, Tony has a Texas Jack pizza there.
Come on, you got to get some. We got the Matish Patel, who's the festival director, been roaming around since I got here early. The entire staff of the Chandler International Film Festival, the City of Chandler, Chandler Center for the Arts, Harkins Theater, and all of you who attended tonight at the fantastic showing of the Tombstone. Thank you so much for coming out.
And I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank, certainly, the Chandler Film Festival, because it's great. There's a lot of films. Everybody is starting in this business. Everybody is working in this business. And it's not the easiest business to do. As Sam Waterston, anybody know who Sam Waterston is? He did a commencement speech at the University of Kentucky a couple of years ago. And he said, acting is one of the best jobs in the world, in the worst business. And that's basically it, because it's a tough business. But Charlton Heston, now I loved working with Charlton Heston. And I'm like 3 feet away from Moses. It was absolutely fantastic. And he was telling us stories one time. The scene where Wyatt and Doc's in bed, and we're out on the porch, and we were waiting for our cue to go in, but they did the scene like 10 takes, and one of the PAs, that's a production assistant, came up to Mr. Heston, and he said, Mr. Heston, would you like to go to your trailer and rest? And he said, no, I'm holding court here. And he just kept on telling us wonderful stories. And the one story that he told me that lives with me, he said he got it from Edward G. Robinson. And he said, Eddie told me, he said, acting, I love. I do it for free. It's the waiting they pay me for. And there's a lot of waiting on the set. So.
Peter, what do you got coming up now? You're working on anything now? You got anything coming up? Or?
I'm working on tons of things. We have a movie that just came out in June called Soldier's Revenge.
Okay.
And with Val Kilmer, I hired Val Kilmer. I produced a movie and I hired Val Kilmer for that. Then I produced another one we just finished editing on called Shooting Star. And that'll be out hopefully in the next couple of months. We just finished editing. And then last year we did 2 movies. One called The Siege at Rikers Station, which that is basically finished because the director just sent me a rough cut yesterday. And then we did another one called Catch the Bullet in Wyoming in August and September. And then next month I go to Nashville. We're doing a movie with Tom Berenger, Trace Atkins, a couple other guys.
Yeah, Trace Atkins.
And we're doing that, and it's called some kind of writers. I don't know what it is. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I haven't read the script yet. He sent me this. He called me last night, and he said, okay, I'm sending you the script. I'm sending you the day of days. I'm sending you this. He says, read the script. Tell me what part you want to play. And here's the parts that are already taken, the Tom Berenger and the Trace Atkins and one other country western singer, Cowboy Bob, but I don't know who he is. Yeah. And so they're doing that, and then he sent me the script. So I haven't read the script yet. I brought it with me tonight, so I'll sit in the hotel room.
We look forward to your next project. And once again, thank you, everybody, for coming out and seeing Peter Sherayko and the 1993 version of Tombstone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.